Hello? Oh, okay. Hey, we're gonna get started here in just a couple minutes. So if everybody wants to grab their seats, and yeah, we'll get going here momentarily. And glad to see you all here this morning. Thank you.
Hi everyone. We are going to get started in just 1 or 2 minutes. Just 1 or 2 minutes, we'll get started. Okay, we are going to get started. Hello everyone. Thank you. So, hello everyone. Hello delegates. Thank you. Hello delegates, friends, colleagues, and welcome to this, our last event here of the 2026 Braver Angels National Convention. My name is Maciek Boni, and it is my privilege to welcome you here. I'm an infectious disease epidemiologist and a professor here at Temple, and it's my job to introduce today's topic and today's conversation on science, humility, and the courage to rebuild trust. I would like to start by introducing my friend, Wilk Wilkinson. Wilk is the director Wilk is the Director of Media Operations at Braver Angels. He's the host of the D-Rate the Hate podcast. And Wilk and I also met, coincidentally, on a podcast called Why Should I Trust You? A little over a year ago, talking about the lowering and the sometimes disappearance of public trust in conversations like this one. Wilk and I also hosted an event here at Temple last September, on the COVID pandemic, what we got right, what we got wrong, and again, what we did and didn't do to earn the public's trust during that critical time. Wilk is an honest broker, a true believer in the American values of openness, honesty, and conversation, and he brings out the best in the guests that he speaks to. And with that, I'm very happy to introduce these guests. Dr. Francis Collins is one of the world's most Dr. Francis Collins is one of the world's most influential scientists. He is a geneticist, a physician who led the NIH's effort in the Human Genome Project in the 1990s. He was the director of the National Institutes of Health for 12 years, from 2009 to 2021, serving under 3 presidents. And at the end of his tenure, of course, Dr. Collins led many parts of the nation's response to the COVID pandemic. Dr. Collins is a member of the National Academies of Science and a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Dr. John Ioannidis. Dr. John Ioannidis is a member of the National Academy of Medicine. He is currently a professor of medicine at Stanford and one of the world's most influential metascientists and statisticians. He publishes on the science of science, and his work has pulled many fields of science up over the past decades by publishing standards on how scientists like myself, should approach questions in science like bias and study design, sample size, rare occurrences, some of the most difficult things that we have to learn about to get you the best scientific evidence. Both of these men are gifted communicators and spent a substantial amount of time engaging the public during the pandemic. And in this conversation, just to bring us back to the topics of humility, courageous citizenship, and trust, we're gonna look at some key questions that perhaps should have been answered 6 years ago, but we're going to try to answer now. So did we communicate with the public in the best way that we could have during the pandemic? When we wanted to disagree with another scientist, did we do that effectively and in the right way? Did we communicate with the public in the best way about whether 10,000 people or 1 million people were going to die in the pandemic? So for all these questions, I turn the microphone over to Wilk Wilkinson and our distinguished guests, Professor Francis Collins and Professor John Ioannidis.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. This is an honor for me every time I get to do these things in front of my fellow Braver Angels, and it's an incredible honor for me to be on the stage with two of my dear friends, and I do consider both these guys dear friends. For those who may not be familiar, Dr. Francis Collins and I have been doing things together now for, it's 4 years. We met initially at the prompting of David Lapp and David Blankenhorn for a Braver Angels connection, one-on-one conversation to talk about the pandemic response. And through that work that I've done with Francis over the past several years, I've had the opportunity and the absolute privilege to meet some of the world's most esteemed and incredible medical professionals, scientists, public health experts, and Dr. John Ioannidis is one of those. And then him and I have had several conversations since then. So I'm absolutely honored and just amazed that I'm on stage with these guys. It's fantastic. But the reason that we're here today is to talk about trust and talk about how we rebuild trust, how we communicate, and the kind of courage that it takes to rebuild trust when we're at a time where institutions and people have lost trust in each other. And I want to acknowledge, first of all, that I know there's some serious. There's still some pain out there, a lot of pain for what's happened over the past 6 years. We're still living in the aftermath of one of the most divisive public health crises in modern history, and the next one is not a matter of if, but a matter of when. When it arrives, the difference between a nation that navigates it well and will come down to one thing: whether we've done the hard work of rebuilding trust in each other and in those institutions that we're going to need to depend on. The only way we get there is if we're willing to have honest, humble, good faith conversations right now, and that's what we're here to do. So I want to talk a little bit real quickly about the Braver Way, because the Braver Way is one of the most impressive things I've seen over the course of my time at Braver Angels, and how we communicate with each other, how we treat each other, how we treat ourselves, really, in a conversation. We heard earlier this week Jim Farrell about how we connect with people, and that it's two pieces. But when we connect, we need to speak freely, fully, without fear, and know that the person that we're speaking with is receiving that. Honesty, dignity, and respect is how we treat people, or should treat people. We should find opportunities to engage as often as we can with people of difference, and try to learn from each other. Not just speak to each other, but learn from each other. And that's definitely what we want to provide an example of today. So again, let me thank my guests here today, and we're going to get right into the questions. We've got a lot to cover in the next 80 minutes or so. So, gentlemen, I want to ask first for permission for something. Before we begin, we have little time to cover a lot of material, and I want to make sure that all pieces of this conversation that I've designed pretty carefully, which is odd because I usually don't prepare a lot of stuff, but I've tried to prepare this carefully so that we can get through a lot of things. So I'm going to ask that we hold each other, including me, to the time that I've kind of set forth for these questions. Do I have that permission?
Yes, of course.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, so I want to talk first about how we got here. And I'm going to start with you, Francis. Looking back, not at the politics or personalities, but how science was communicated with the public, what do you wish had been done differently?
Well, a lot. That's a good place to start. First, let me just say it's a privilege to be here on this panel with John and Wilk, and with all of you, as we are here talking about trust, and maybe our theme should be epistemic humility, that we have to be really careful about what we know and what maybe we're not that sure of. I just got to say, because this is my 4th year as a Braver Angels member, it's really amazing to see what's happening here. I remember those first meetings I had with Wilk, because that was the idea that I think David Blankenhorn and David Lapp and Bill Doherty had. You know, if you're going to be a Braver Angel, you got to learn how to listen. How about listening to this guy? And the first couple of times we met, I think David Lapp was sort of keeping the peace and being the moderator. Wilk had some really strong opinions about what had happened with public health responses to COVID-19. And I got to tell you, they were hard to listen to. And I thought, I don't know if this is going to work. But I did listen. And just well enough to begin to actually understand and not just plan my response. Because, of course, that's what Braver Angels teaches you to do. And bit by bit, I began to realize I needed to hear that. There's a perspective there that even though I was completely immersed in 2020 and 2021 in COVID-19 responses as the director of the NIH, I really didn't understand what it felt like to be out in the heartland dealing with the recommendations that were coming at people. And I needed to get that better into my head and realize all the things that we might have done differently. So bit by bit, I began to realize this is somebody who's got a lot of substance and somebody who is not just somebody I can respond to. This is somebody I could be friends with. And over the time, that's what happened. Now, I still think Wilk is wrong about a lot of stuff.
As do I.
Yeah, exactly. And it's quite symmetric in that regard. But we love the chance to engage on those things. And we're going to do that for you here this morning. So to answer your question after that little intro, yeah, there was a lot of communication failures in the course of what was happening in 20 and 21, and I'll take some of the blame for that. We were faced with a pandemic where we really didn't know what the kind of consequences were going to be from this virus that we didn't understand very well. And yet, trying to make recommendations to people about how to protect themselves from dying. And so recommendations were made, and they were made in a fashion that was based on imperfect information, and then oftentimes they had to be changed, and that surprised people who thought, you guys don't know what you're talking about. I wish, the one thing I would say here is that every time somebody like me had been put in front of a camera, which happened a lot in 2020, we would have said, look, this is an evolving situation. We are learning about this virus every day. I'm going to give you the best guess I've got about what you should do to protect yourself and your family. But this might have to change when we learn more about it.
Okay.
We didn't say that.
Thank you very much. And John, when you look back, thank you. And when you look back, not at the politics, not at the personality, but how science was communicated with the public, what do you wish had been done differently? Take a couple minutes to...
Well, I also want to thank you for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to join this panel, and Wilk and Francis, amazing people, and to see such a wonderful effort to try to bridge the gap that currently exists. So scientific communication failed. I failed. You know, I feel that I'm an example of someone who hopefully was well-intentioned, but I didn't really achieve what I wanted to see achieved, which was to have everyone safe, everyone taken care of, everyone respected, everyone really listened to. I don't think that this happened. And I don't want to blame others because I was part of this. The more highly cited I am, I think the more responsible I feel for this failure. I cannot blame my students or other scientists who are struggling with very limited funds and limited resources. If I failed, why should I ask more from them? So I think we were in our ivory tower. We didn't realize that there's people out there who suffer every day, even without a crisis. And throwing a crisis to them, and throwing then all our measures to them, many of whom, suffered even more because of removing their basic freedoms, removing, their ability to work, closing their businesses, removing their future, their education, damaging the mental health of them and their kids and of everyone, not allowing them to see their elderly parents, not allowing them to communicate, to socialize, to go to practice their religion, and always asking from them, do this, mandating them to do things that were difficult to explain even to scientists. And from my perspective, I have to say, probably 95% of the measures that we threw it to these people were scientifically wrong. Not just morally wrong, but in my perspective, they were scientifically wrong.
Wow.
So that's a major burden.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, a lot there to swallow. I want to talk, John, and I want you to go to this first, about a word that became weaponized during the pandemic that we've all heard a lot, and probably more so during the pandemic than probably any other time that I can remember in my lifetime, and that word is misinformation. In hindsight, do you believe that and I'll have you take about 2 minutes to try and work through this question, but in hindsight, do you believe that the way that word was used was helpful to protect the public, or did it probably do more harm or more damage on its own?
I think it did a lot of harm. I have a paper that was published recently in the American Journal of Medicine with exactly that title. That misinformation is causing damage to science, health, and to people. We are all wrong. I think I'm wrong all the time. How are you going to make me correct my wrong attitudes or beliefs or evidence of information? You're going to tell me, you're spreading misinformation, you're spreading copious misinformation, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're stupid, you don't understand, you're evil. That's not going to work.
Typically not.
That's definitely not, that's not the recipe to correct me or for me to correct anyone else by telling them this. So we need to be able to listen, because unfortunately, many of the conspiracy theorists of the official science narrative actually had things perfectly right. And the official science that I represented as well, we had it completely wrong. But even if we were completely correct, treating people as if they were like second-class minds, second-class brains, second-class citizens, public threats, like dangers to the community, even if they were completely wrong, I think that was not the recipe to correct what was wrong.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. And Francis, when we think about the weaponization of the word misinformation, do you believe that word has been helpful or has done more harm on its own?
Well, it's probably been used in so many ways by now that maybe the word started out making sense, but in a lot of people's minds now it seems more like it's an insult or an attack, which is too bad. But let's be clear, there is such a thing as objective truth. And when a statement is made that is in controversy, and it doesn't fit with objective truth, that's important to call out. And there were a lot of things that were being said about COVID-19 that were demonstrably false, often with naive good intentions, but they were false. And I don't think you can simply let that go by and say, well, everybody has an opinion when you're talking about something that's causing thousands of people to die every day. So if we didn't use misinformation, which got contaminated pretty quickly by sounding like it was a political statement or an attack on people, we had to have some way of saying, look, this is a really serious situation. We want to be sure that we can distinguish between things that are shown by evidence to be true from things that are not, so that people can make the best decisions for themselves. The vaccines is a good example, of course. We know that in the United States, 3.1 million people are alive today because of the vaccines. They turned out to be maybe the most amazing scientific development humanity has ever mounted. And yet we also know 234,000 people are in graveyards who felt that the vaccines were not safe, were not good for them. That's a pretty scary thing to say. So was that a consequence of misinformation? Yeah, it kind of was, but maybe that's not a good word for us to use.
Right.
But this isn't just like an idle conversation about use of language. This was people's life and death.
Yeah. I want to expand on this a little bit between the two of you, because I think there's going to be a bit of a disconnect here for sure. And it brings me to something that I've asked both of you before in other conversations, that I've asked many, many other people in public health and science, and is, that question of how do two incredibly brilliant minds, I mean, people of the greatest stature in the world of health and science, look at the same data and come to different conclusions. That is something that happens regularly, and there's a lot of times that people don't understand how that happens. So, John, I would like you to take that a little bit, take about a minute and a half. Each of you kind of take this for about a minute and a half, because I think it's an important thing that needs to be hashed through for especially people that aren't in science.
So this is very common, and this is what we call differences in inferential reproducibility, the technical term. People look at different data for the same question. There's 200 million papers out there. So the question, how many lives vaccines saved? I think we agree with Francis that they were a very positive development, that they saved lives, but I think the estimate of 3.1 million, which is driven by looking at some data and some studies, I think is completely off. My reading and what I have published is that vaccines during the pandemic saved 2.5 million lives around the world, not 3.1 million in the US. Looking at different data sets, different estimates that are in the peer-reviewed scientific literature. The second component is that people put different values and different weights in the data sets. They may say that I don't want to put too much weight on this aspect or that study because I think it's biased. There are some formal ways to look at biases, but they're not bulletproof, and they do have subjectivity. And the third component is the values that people have in interpreting priorities. What is most important? It's a value system. There's intellectual bias. There's what we think is most important in our lives. We all agree that human lives are important, but beyond that, there's many aspects about our outcomes, how we live our lives, our health aspects, that people will put different weights. So people will disagree with the same scientific literature and with perfect credentials.
Okay.
I think John says it very well in terms of how those differences arise, although I think he's totally wrong about the lives that were saved by the vaccines. And I think the majority of other epidemiologists would agree closer with me than with him. I just got to say that. But what is it that we do? We basically have various bits of information attached to a particular conclusion, and we all have a way of assigning greater weight to this one and less to that one. And that's hopefully done in an objective fashion based on whether that's a source that's actually honest and reliable and competent and has humility and all those things that are important for trusting a source. But it's also going to affect our own intrinsic sort of biases about what we think is most reliable. And we all have those biases. I do too. I used to think I was this perfectly rational actor, and COVID came along and convinced me that's not the case. We all have a web of belief that I write about in this book called The Road to Wisdom, which has a lot of braver angels in it as well. And we have various things that we're very attached to in terms of things that we are unlikely to want to give up easily. And those particular perspectives, whether we're thinking about it or not, are going to influence us, and they're not always rational. What was it Pascal said? The heart has reasons that reason knows not of. Yeah, we have an emotional side, a passion side that is going to influence us whether we think it is or not.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And we're going to get into some other pillars of science that I think talk a little bit about similar things that we talked about when we talked about the Web of Beliefs on the D-Rate Day podcast back in the day. People can go find that episode. It's really good conversation. I'm biased. But I want to kind of take our next step in this journey because, and I'm thinking like the best of times and worst of times in terms of science and trust, and I'm going to give you guys each a question here, and I want you each to take about 2.5 minutes. But Francis, you've spent your career at the frontier of what's possible in medicine and science. Now, setting aside all that's been contentious and political for just a moment, what is happening in science, research, and development right now that people in this room may not know about, but probably should?
I'm really glad we can go there. This is an amazing time for advances in medical research. Things that I did not think would be possible in my lifetime that are happening. We are curing sickle cell disease with gene therapy. Yeah. We have people with stage 4 cancers who are getting into clinical trials for immunotherapy and not just getting a response, it looks like they're cured. We have people with type 1, yeah, clap for that. As a cancer survivor myself, I'm paying close attention. We have people with type 1 diabetes who are now taking advantage of a very cutting-edge protocol where their own cells are turned into the cells that make insulin and implanted back in their body, and they're off of insulin. It's like this may be an actual cure for that juvenile type diabetes. So, and in the basic science, we're doing things using AI, figuring out how a protein folds just looking at its amino acid sequence, which was considered to be like the problem we'll never solve because it requires quantum mechanics. It's kind of solved. And we have the opportunity to begin to figure out how those 86 billion neurons between your ears do what they do. And we're going to figure out, therefore, a whole lot about things like schizophrenia and PTSD and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and autism that we desperately need to know. This is the moment. It's like the golden era. In fact, I can talk about it, but I'd rather you listen to a few people whose lives are affected by it. I've started a new nonprofit called Discovery Lives in Us to try to spread these stories of how real individuals across the country are experiencing this advance in medical science. Could be all right if we showed that video? Yep. It's just 2 minutes.
Wonderful.
So it is the best of times in terms of opportunities, but it's not the best of times in terms of the support for it. There's some worst of times in here too, Charles Dickens. So I don't know how you want to do this, Wilk, in terms of laying out some of that. I'm here in a braver way kind of approach, which means I'm going to be really honest. There's some really bad things happening to support the progress that we now can do.
Well, yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that, but I want to keep on moving. That's an incredible video, and John, I'd like you to take a couple quick seconds to reflect on that video. But then I also want to ask you. You study science and how it works as a system, and not just what it discovers, but how it works, how it communicates and sustains itself through trust and doesn't come off the rails. When you look at the science ecosystem today, are we creating the conditions necessary for the next generation breakthroughs, and what worries you?
So clearly science is the best thing that can happen to humans. You know, Homo sapiens sapiens. You know, the best thing that can happen to us is to have science, and we need research for that. We need support for research. So beyond doubt, this is a priority. I think this is something that should not be contested. The best investment we can make as a society is to good science, to research. Beyond this, we have to recognize that we are accountable, and we want to use that support in a meaningful way. And we need to deal with the reality. The reality is that in this country, not just during the pandemic, but for many years before the pandemic, we could not really improve life expectancy meaningfully. In many groups of the population, actually life expectancy decreased. Health span, not just lifespan, did even worse. We have an accumulation of chronic diseases, of major ailments, people who are alive, but actually they're tortured every day from what they go through. There are discoveries being made, but actually Science of Science analysis suggests that despite having about 50 million people publishing scientific papers at the moment, we have less disruptive discoveries than we had in the past. Disruption is becoming less common. Why is that? There can be many explanations, but if you put pressure on a system to deliver, and the system is currently at almost a breaking point of pressure, people will take fewer risks. People will be less likely to venture into the dark, to the very bold, to the very innovative. They will just try to do the same, just try to satisfy reviewers who would be waiting for them in the corner to kill them if they venture out. So we need to give breathing space to science to try to venture out for the unknown, and we need to think of our community priorities. What makes difference for the many, not just the few, not just the rich, not that just the ones who have access to the best technologies, the most expensive technologies, you know, the personalized that will save the billionaire. We need to save the average person out there.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, Francis, I want to give you a couple minutes because I want you to speak about something that you've been very open about. You just referred to it a couple minutes ago. The state of American research today, with funding, young scientists, the political environment around science. How do you talk about this without it becoming a partisan or personal kind of sounding thing? And why does that matter to everybody, no matter how they vote?
Well, medical research never should be a partisan issue. We all care about the health of our families, our communities, ourselves. And for most of American history since World War II, medical research has been a shared agreement across parties. It was never political. When I was NIH director for 12 years under 3 presidents, it was fine. And I was spending more time with people on the opposite side than the president for those three experiences, and it was never an issue. But that's changed now. It's another consequence, I fear, of what happened with our extreme polarization that got worse during COVID and is now very much around us. And the consequence in terms of what's happening to science is really severe and unprecedented. Proposed cuts in medical research of 20 to 40%. More than 5,000 grants stopped somewhere in the middle of their progress without a good reason. More than 400 clinical trials for things like cancer and Alzheimer's disease that were terminated halfway along, leaving the patients involved in those trials up in the air without really understanding what had happened. That's pretty unethical. On top of that, the effect that this had on young scientists who now, if you're lucky, might get your grant funded, but you only have about 1 in 20 chance now, where it used to be more like 1 in 5. Universities under attack, including Stanford, but many others as well, ostensibly because of failure to handle protests about Israel and Gaza. But does it make sense to cut medical research as a consequence of that? I don't think so. And then, and now prominent political decision-making usurping the role that should have been of science. We could disagree about how many lives mRNA vaccines saved from COVID, but it certainly saved a lot. And now our country has decided not to invest in mRNA vaccines for a future pandemic on purely political grounds, which is putting us in a very vulnerable place if the next pandemic comes along, and you know, it probably will at some time. We have various other statements coming out about Tylenol and autism that are frankly not based upon rigorous science and are scaring a lot of people. So we're in a circumstance where what used to be a pretty rigorous assessment about what is true and what the public needs to respond to has kind of gotten very diffused. I'm really worried about that. And it's not just medical science. Look what's happening with climate change, which was a priority for a while and now seems to be in a place of political denial. This is hurting our country, both in terms of our health, but also our economy. Medical research is one of the best supporters of economic growth. The people in China at the head of their country are loving what's happening. We used to be the United States, the unquestioned leader of the world in biomedical research. China was coming up really fast. We seem to be leaving the stage. That can't be a good thing.
Not a good thing. That could be a bad thing for everybody, right? So, John, I basically want to ask, a similar question. You know, the state of American research right now, funding, young scientists, the political environment around science. How do you talk about it without it becoming a political or partisan issue? And why should that matter to everyone, no matter how much they, or no matter how they vote, who they vote for? Take a couple minutes.
I think it's important to completely disengage politics from supporting science. We have to acknowledge that unfortunately, our community, we as scientists, unfortunately did engage, very fervently so. We had our top journals, like Nature, making political endorsements on who should be the president or who should not be the president. And a study from Stanford shows that once you have scientific journals or scientific communities endorse political sides, immediately have devastating effects on trust. People think that you're dealing with a political enemy. You're not dealing with a neutral, kind of benevolent, well-intentioned scientist. You're dealing with your political enemy. So we have a lot of curative work to do to disengage. At the same time, we do see all these attacks, as Francis described. But I mean, what do you expect? if you attack as a politician, if you forget that you're a scientist and you attack as a politician, good luck. You're dealing with politicians. They will just fight back as politicians, and we are not prepared to fight as politicians. I know Francis is struggling to keep the momentum for funding, but goodness, I'm not trained to be a politician. I'm not trained to fight politically. I'm trained just to say, please leave science aside and please help our young generation, which has been undervalued, I have to say, for many, many, many years, even before the pandemic. Francis, I know you've tried, but goodness, the first R01 is given at an age of 45 plus.
That's so wrong. That has to get fixed.
Mozart would be dead 10 years before getting his first R01, or the equivalent Mozart of science.
Okay.
So I think we need to save our young generation and to give them opportunities and let dinosaurs like me just go away.
Well, I don't want either one of you to go away, but I do have a quick question. When we think about the golden era of scientific possibility, so we have the golden era of scientific possibility on one hand, and then we have a genuine crisis in the conditions that make science possible on the other hand. If that tension does not get solved, what do we risk? What does it cost us? John, I want to start with you. Take about a minute, and then I want to pass it off to Francis.
I think that we run the risk of this becoming a vendetta, regardless of who is in power, just trying to smear, destroy, dismantle opponents. Science becoming torn in the process. People who are creative, who are good thinkers, not being interested to go into science. Why should I go into this? There's no future. There's no support. There's no sense of social offering to society. No sense of achievement. So we would lose talent. We would lose the best. I think we're already losing talent and losing the best. I don't know. They move to the industry. They move to ventures, to whatever. I don't know. So without science, our society is doomed, I have to say. I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I think we're doomed.
Well, I think that's probably right. I'd like to hear Francis
Totally
give his.
agree, John. And I think it is young scientists are the group that I'm most worried about. They're our most important talent pool, and they're incredibly demoralized. I mean, talk to a graduate student or a postdoc or an assistant professor in one of our wonderful research universities. Ask them how they're doing. They are deeply, deeply troubled, worried about whether they have a career path anymore. And many of them are, in fact, leaving the country, going to places like England or Europe or Australia, or certainly anybody who has Chinese background is getting an incredible welcome red carpet thrown for them by China, who will give them the kind of resources that now are very hard to find here. We used to be the place where everybody wanted to be. We're not looking like that now. Another part of this that we should mention is immigrants have been an incredibly important part of the American success story. 40% of American Nobel Prizes were won by immigrants, and we're making them feel very unwelcome. That's a big mistake.
I think that's a big mistake. So now I want to talk about how we start to rebuild the trust. We know that we're in a position right now where we don't trust each other, we don't trust our institutions. This mindset is becoming more widespread. But we've got to figure out a way to rebuild the trust. There's a sociologist named Robert Merton that argued that science runs on 4 core commitments. That it pursues truth without a personal agenda, that the findings are shared openly, that merit is the only standard that matters, and that every claim is subject to honest exchange. John, if you had to name one of those 4 pillars that's under the most stress today, what would it be?
Goodness, I think all 4 pillars are under stress at the moment. And I don't know which one will crack first. Perhaps all 4 of them have cracked. I mean, we have clearly lack of disinterestedness. We have very strong conflicts of interest. Merit is taken sideways, and we don't allow many people to enter science and offer their best for various reasons. Our social system and inequalities are just taking a toll at that. Sharing, yes, it did improve from less than 1% of papers sharing their data 25 years ago to about 20%, but still 80% don't share their data and 95% don't share their code. And organized skepticism, which is the 4th pillar, see what happened in the last few years. You know, people who were skeptics were very easily just labeled and smeared as conspiracy theorists and thrown away, along with people who were thinking, you know, like flat Earth and major things that are completely out of range. So all of these four pillars support each other. So once you have one gone, I mean, the others will go as well. And we cannot just try to salvage one. We need to work on all four of them. And it's a major struggle and an everyday struggle. You know, every scientific project, every scientific paper, every scientific discourse, every opportunity to talk, to debate, to discuss, to review, to assess, to reassess, to agree, to disagree. You know, they need to be subject to these rules of engagement and these higher level values. I mean, if we lose that sight, then I don't think we're going to make really much progress.
Yeah.
I don't want to despair, because these values do exist in microenvironments, in single encounters, you know, hopefully in events like this one.
Yeah.
But we need more of that. We need more of that, and we need to give more opportunities for such events and for such efforts to happen.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Francis, the same question. I want to ask specifically, John didn't pick one. He said all four are under stress. But I want specifically to know, do you feel that all are under stress, all are in danger of fracturing? Is there a specific one that you think is more?
Well, just to remind the list, and I guess the way that Merton described them, there was universalism, a commonality, disinterestedness, and organized skepticism. I'm not in the same dark view that John is about the current state of the scientific community as far as their adherence to those pillars. I think for the most part, individual scientists are pretty darn well committed to that, and that's based upon having had the chance over 35 years to be part of that community in a very active way. For instance, giving your data away. The Genome Project decided to give all of its data away every 24 hours, which was a new thing that hadn't been done before. It's kind of become the norm for other large-scale projects like that are producing large data sets that lots of people can use. So that mindset, I think, has moved in the right direction. And organized skepticism is really what science is all about. There's nothing a scientist likes better than finding something wrong with his competitors' findings, and we all do that regularly. Maybe the one that seems to me hardest to defend is disinterestedness, because I want, as a scientist working on a problem, to be interested in it. I don't want it to be like a completely academic intellectual exercise. I want to care about it, and most scientists do. The problem is, do you care too much? And you induce your own bias. Do you assume that your hypothesis is right, and therefore only do the experiments that are going to back you up and ignore the ones that are saying you're wrong? That's a risk in there. That's always been a risk. It certainly is a risk now. But I would like to argue that, in fact, this foundation of what the scientific method is about and what the scientific community adheres to is actually not in bad shape right now, even though the whole place feels like it's being battered by the things we talked about a minute ago.
Yeah. Thank you. So this actually, brings me back to the thing again. How do we look at these different things? You guys have been doing this thing, this public health, this science thing, your whole entire life, but you're seeing the system differently right now. Francis, you seem to be a little bit more optimistic. You John, think that these things are under a lot more stress. You see the pressure points differently. What does that tell us about what does that tell us about how the general public, people who don't live in this world every single day, how are they supposed to compartmentalize and navigate these kind of things. And I'll give you each just 2 minutes. But how does the general public who doesn't live in that world, how are they supposed to navigate this, especially in this age we live in today, where there's just so much information? John?
That's a very tough question because the public is bombarded with lots of pieces that they have to integrate. You know, each one of us has to integrate that information in some way, mixing it with our values and our expectations and our beliefs and what we want to be true rather than what is true. At a minimum, I think that we need some polyphony. You know, we need to be able to listen to different voices, to different perspectives, to different viewpoints. Hopefully with data and with some referencing of data, because now with AI, one can throw any type of non-existing fake news and fake information to the public. But try to listen to many different perspectives and try to anchor yourself into data more than on opinion. Then also try to separate what is opinion, what is data. And for data, is it solid? Is it weak? Is it open? You know, Francis has a more optimistic perspective because, you know, in the world of genetics, data sharing is like 100%.
Didn't used to be, but it is.
And, you know, that's to Francis. I always say that one of the greatest injustices is that, you know, Francis doesn't have a Nobel Prize yet for his work in genetics. I hope the injustice gets solved soon. But at the same time, most other fields, you know, are far more secretive. And in fact, a lot of science now is happening even entirely outside of the scientific literature, you know, let alone sharing data. You know, not even a paper, not even a preprint. If you look at all the startups, the unicorns, you know, the AI behemoths, I mean, you know, they don't want to publish. They just disrupt life, everything. They are supposed to be the science and technology of the future. You're not going to find what they do, with few exceptions, like AlphaFold, which was another Nobel Prize. You will not find it in the scientific literature. So science is starting to happen outside of science, and those who sell science to the public usually are not even scientists. You know, they're influencers.
Not good.
So it's a complete mess.
That is a mess. That is a mess. Francis, oh wait, you still need to answer that one. I apologize. I jumped on you there a little earlier, but when we see those different pressure points, what does that tell us? The general public should be. I mean, how's the general public going to navigate?
I think it's really tough for the general public to figure out who the heck to trust here when it comes to this barrage of information that's coming at you every day, and especially now with social media and algorithms that are going to feed you things that the algorithm thinks you're going to like because of something else you did earlier. It's very hard to sort through that out. I think we in the scientific community did not take seriously the fact that part of our responsibility is to tell people what we do and why we do it. And so there's a paucity there, I think, of really accessible information that's based upon the reality of what science is all about. And people are struggling about who to trust and what information to trust. And there's a big reason for that. I think most of us, go with me here, most of us, when you're looking at information, you're trying to decide, do I trust that? I think you're going through 4 criteria in your head. First of all, is this a source that has integrity? Do they have a history of being honest? Second, are they competent? Have they done the work? Or do they actually know what they're talking about based on really deep analysis of the issue, or are they just throwing off something in a Facebook post? A third one, which maybe you don't think about, but I think we should, is humility. Does that source actually say, I know about this, but I don't know about everything? I think if you stick with those 3, you're probably in a good space. But then there's that 4th one, which is, does that source share my values? And that is a natural way to evaluate information. And in a healthier circumstance, that would probably be a good thing. But if we're deeply polarized, then a source that's not in your tribal group is going to be immediately considered as untrustworthy, even though they're telling you something really important. And a source that's in your tribal group may be giving you complete bull, and you're going to go, oh yeah, I know those people, that must be true. That's getting in the way. So no wonder the public has trouble.
Yeah, one of the biggest downfalls of us versus them tribalism is that idea that we look at those who are in our particular tribe, and because they have the right jersey, we find them to be trustworthy. And that is not the right criteria to be looking at. Which takes me to my next thing here is when we start thinking about trust and responsibility, and the responsibility that we have, not only as scientists but citizens. I want to talk about that because we keep hearing and talking about trust in science and how are we going to restore trust in science. Trust is not something that can just be declared, right? You can't just say, well, you have to trust me on the science. Although I think that was said once, but that's neither here nor there. Trust is not something that can be declared. It has to be earned. I think we can agree on that. What does that actually require, then, of scientists? So, Francis, take 2 minutes, and then we'll give John the same question.
Well, I'll go back to, what people deserve from a scientist, which is to speak with integrity and competence and humility. Can't say that's always been the case. That's our job. And to be accessible and not to feel like, oh, that's beneath me to actually explain what I do. And some academic attitudes sort of come across that way. And to be exquisitely clear about what you know and what you don't know, and to be willing to share the uncertainty, not just the things that you're certain about. I talked earlier about how in COVID, we didn't do a very good job of that part. Even though people were saying, well, you just got to tell people what to do, it would have been better to say, and this is the best we've got, and it might be wrong. We need to learn that lesson for the future. And in every kind of communication we're having, apply that. Otherwise, we're not serving the public. And we've got to make it accessible. That video I showed you is part of this new nonprofit enterprise I'm engaged in called Discovery Lives in Us, to try to provide those kinds of stories and some background information that goes with it about the science in a way that maybe can break through all the noise, has to be totally responsible about what it says and making that accurate, but as a chance to do a better job of connecting with everyday Americans about science, which is admittedly pretty complicated stuff, and you need to have a way into that doesn't get well served by lectures from endowed professors, as smart as they are, but maybe is better served by a human story then attached to some authentic science.
Thank you. Thank you. John, I'm going to give you a couple minutes. What does that require of scientists? What is the responsibility of a scientist in this earning of trust? Not the institution, but the scientists.
I love Francis' triad. I would reverse it starting with humility, but
I accept.
Also humility along with integrity and competence are a wonderful triad. I would add transparency, because very often people just don't know. I mean, who is this guy? Stanford professor, but maybe I received $100 million from Google, or some more transparency about who is doing what, for what reason, and for what outcome. And it could be fine, but but what people need to know. Yeah. And I think also a fifth element would be a respect for everyone, and not having the assumption that, oh goodness, I'm a professor, I know more. Perhaps actually I know less than the average citizen by being a professor in my ivory tower. Maybe I just haven't realized what it means to be that average citizen, let alone to be a citizen who is under a lot of stress and is marginalized and disadvantaged, has no access to health care, has access to health care, but goodness, things can go wrong in zillions of ways, gets financially bankrupt by effective treatments, cancer, financial bankruptcy. So I need to be sensitized to all of these major problems that are out there that may not be so easily tangible for me for my technical worldview. That's not easy. And personally, I see that I fail all the time, and I always try to grasp, so what am I missing here? Do I know how things are out there? I'm going to talk about a technical issue, but it's not just technical. In medicine and public health, it's about real people. Do I know who are these real people and what they want and what they suffer from?
Hugely important. Hugely important. When this is another part of the Brave Angels way is we all have our blind spots, but not one of us is not worth talking to. And when people get stuck in their own bubbles and they just can't put themselves or see themselves in these other environments. They don't understand it. It's like they're speaking different languages, and a lot of things can get missed. And I think that's part of what we learned right away in our work together, Francis, is my life as a blue-collar rural Midwesterner and yours in the Beltway bubble of Washington, D.C. We lived in completely different worlds. We spoke different languages, metaphorically, I guess. But the reality is that responsibility. I love the transparency, the responsibility for trying to build credibility and earning trust is something that, again, is I think hugely important in how we move forward with this. But John, I've got the next question is for you, and you've written about calibrating uncertainty, the being honest about what we don't know, and without that honesty being weaponized against science itself. In the current media environment, is that actually achievable, or is asking, or are we asking scientists to play a game that they just can't win?
It's very difficult. I wouldn't say it's not achievable. And some people probably have more talent compared to others to navigate the waters of a media communication in that regard. Media by definition, they want extreme, exaggerated titles, like the 3 words that would capture attention, the message that would be overblowing everyone's brain, and most things in science are not like that. We have the fascinating, amazing discoveries now and then. We have the huge effects, the terrible things like smoking. But goodness, we have lots of small effects, tiny effects, uncertain effects, fluctuating effects that we need to try to communicate without adding that headline that we found some major truth, or this is going to kill you, or this is going to save you, or everybody needs to do that, or everybody should not do that. So that's not easy. We need to fight back. We need to conscientiously fight back. If you decide to go to talk to prime time, be prepared to say what you want to say, because the anchors want you to say something specific, and they will get it from you otherwise. So just don't answer their questions. Just say what you came to say.
That is an interesting strategy, but it's awesome. So
and add uncertainty. I mean, usually if you add more uncertainty, you're not going to be wrong. On average.
Yeah.
Usually you're not going to be wrong because people will just diminish it and throw it away, and then there will be a clip of a clip of a clip showing you saying that I found the cure of cancer, or COVID will go away in 2 days, or something like that.
Yeah, that I find certainty to be the biggest roadblock to growth, the biggest roadblock to actually learning and finding new things. So, and then the humility of being able to express when you're uncertain, I think it's a hugely important thing as human beings that we find that and have that. Francis,
Yeah, it's misplaced certainty that we need to be careful about. As a scientist, I will say it's our goal to achieve certainty by doing the experiment and actually discovering truth. Yeah. And we do believe in truth. I don't know any postmodernist scientists who say truth is all relative. But we are often short of that, and we should admit it when we have what would then be misplaced claims of certainty when there's still more work to do.
Yeah. Do you want to take a second to...
No, I think we still have the same goals. I mean, yeah, we need to reach the truth. We need to reach certainty. You know, it's asymptotic. You know, we almost never get there with very few exceptions. And we have to make our decisions with uncertainty, but informed uncertainty. So that's okay. You know, actually, I would have to say that if we knew everything, it would be very boring. You know,
I think that's right. I think
Not even close.
Francis, I want to get to this next question because you've navigated that exact tension for years publicly, right? The working through these things, trying to communicate honestly about uncertainty in an environment where that uncertainty gets weaponized. You know, this is something that you've dealt with for decades, and it gets weaponized almost immediately by certain, you know, outrage entrepreneurs, grievance grifters. People have probably heard me talk about them. What have you learned about navigating that, Francis? And where does that break down, no matter how careful you are?
Well, it kind of comes back to what John was talking about, that you can be careful, but the people who are framing your remarks are not so interested in that. Go back to COVID, when I was serving in the first Trump administration, and then right after that in the Biden administration, sort of back to back, and was in that situation of trying to make statements to the public about what we knew about the virus and what actions they might take to protect themselves. Any tendency that I had to try to couch those recommendations with some uncertainty about what we don't know were extremely unwelcomed, not just by the media, but also by the political forces. And that was in 2 different presidencies. No, tell them what they have to do. If you leave uncertainty there, then all the people who are out there who don't really know what they're talking about but sound very confident will actually get the attention. And you've got to be confident too. Well, that was the wrong recommendation, but it certainly, I fell into it more often than I should have. So yeah, there's this constant battle to try to be what a scientist should be, really excited about things you have discovered, but also really skeptical about whether you have the whole story or not, recognizing that you could be wrong. But at the same time, encouraging people to believe that science does make mistakes, but it's ultimately self-correcting, that anything that science has put forward that turns out not to be true, you're going to figure that out because somebody else will come along and try to reproduce the experiment and say, no, it didn't turn out that way, which is, as I said earlier, a big triumph for the scientist who made that discovery too.
Right? John, we've talked a lot about what scientists owe the public, but I want you to flip that. What do courageous citizens in this room have a responsibility to do differently? And how can they be participants in getting this right together? Because I think we do have to get this right together.
I think that each one of us is different. So each one of us should try to think, how can I contribute to help my fellow citizens, to help my community, to help good efforts, good initiatives. Science is such a wonderful thing. Research is contributing so much. How can I help? And there can be many ways that this could happen. I think it could start from creating a culture of dialogue, creating a culture of tolerance, creating a culture of sincerity, of integrity, of willingness to be honest in our everyday conversations. Because these are the type of conversations that build up eventually to millions of people and eventually infiltrate also how everything, including science and including research, is going to happen or not happen. it creates the prior, to use a Bayesian term, of where we start and where we can go. If we start from insincerity, lack of integrity, no dialogue, science is not going to help us that much. It may help some fraction, some clan, some sub-segment, some privileged sub-segment, if it works. And actually, it may not work at all. If we reach a point of complete lack of cohesion, why should we do science? Why should we educate our children? We should just give them a gun and teach them, how to shoot each other, because it's coming soon and we'll have a civil war and they need to protect themselves. So we need to create an environment, a society, where dialogue and eventually science, which is a very delicate thing to survive, can survive and thrive.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And Francis, same thing for you. We've talked about what science is for the public. What are the courageous citizens in this room? What do they need to do to be part of getting this right together?
Well, that's such a Braver Angels question about what does it mean to be a courageous citizen at this time of such divisions. I've learned so much from Braver Angels about how to try to approach this circumstance. I wrote a lot about it in this book called The Road to Wisdom, and in the last chapter of this, it basically tries to answer your question. What can the average person do, the average courageous citizen, we the people, to try to address what everybody would agree is a pretty tough time for our country, with all of the divisiveness and grievance and animosity that seems to characterize a lot of public discourse. And I think it's along the lines of what John was also saying, is that each of us has got to take responsibility for our role in this. And part of that is to heighten our filtration of incoming information, to really tell the difference between a fact and a fake, maybe by applying those criteria of humility and integrity and competence. And okay, I'll take transparency there as well as another one, and not be taken in by information that's coming at you from somebody who does not meet those standards. And along with that, because how is it that information gets spread around that isn't good for people? It's all of us deciding we liked it, or we retweeted it, or something like that. Don't do that if it's actually something you're not sure if it's true or not, because we might be able to break what is otherwise kind of a really vicious circle of information getting out there that's not helping. Putting all of that together, and then also recognizing that in the Braver Angels way, it is about we the people, and that means spending more time talking to people who disagree with you, not just in this convention, but actually with your neighbors. And I know all of you as Braver Angels people are doing that, but the more of that we can do, the better. Having a chance to really listen to somebody who doesn't have the same view you do about public health or immigration or whatever it is, and basically over time lift up our respect for each other, which at the moment is not in a great place.
Very nice, thank you. So as we round out our time here, and we're getting real close to the end of our time, I want you to take I want you to each take a couple minutes. I'm going to, since this is John's first time here, I'm going to give him the last word. I want you to take a couple minutes here, Francis, and if you had one ask of, or one last thing that you want all the courageous citizens in this hall today, one last thing to share with them today, or one ask of them, or a combination thereof, what would that be? Just take about 2 minutes real quick to do that, and then I'm going to give the same thing to John to round out this conversation between the two of you.
I would say wrap your arms around hope. There's lots of reasons to feel discouraged. I certainly have been feeling some of them. At the same time, look at 1776, what those folks were facing at that point, and yet they had boldness, they had courage, and look what we were given as a gift by that same attitude. We are intrinsically capable of that as well, even when things seem like they're not in a great place. I also like the comment that was once made by somebody at the White House: never waste a good crisis. we are kind of in a societal crisis. Let's not waste it. Let's learn from what is happening here. See in ourselves part of the reasons why we got in the crisis. I'm seeing that in myself. Wilk has helped me with that. And also, as we imagine sort of where we want to take our community, our country, let's imagine not just going back to the way it was, but something better. Nostalgia, as wonderful as it is not a strategy. We can do better.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Francis. And I'm glad I could be helped. John, if take a couple minutes. If there was an ask that you could ask of these courageous citizens, or if there was one last thing that you want them to know in your time on the stage here today, what would that be?
I did like what Francis suggested to wrap our arms around hope. I would extend it to say, wrap our arms against each other. You know, love each other, trust each other. Let us listen to others in freedom, in total freedom. Defend our freedom. Defend first the freedom of the people who we disagree with. Defend the freedom of those who are oppressed. Defend the freedom of those who are marginalized. Defend the freedom of those who have fewer opportunities. And listen to them and learn. I feel that I learned a lot today, hearing what Francis had to say and also what you commented on, Wilk. And goodness, we know so little. I feel so completely ignorant all the time. And the only way to find out how ignorant we are and to build that brighter future is to listen to what others have to say and what others have to contribute.
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. And yeah, we need to wrap our arms around each other in hope and love and understanding. In 1776, a group of people who disagreed about a great many things signed their names to a document that asked something specific of everyone who came after them. Not agreement, not uniformity, but the willingness to do the hard work of self-governance together, in good faith, with honesty, and with the understanding that the experiment only works if enough people choose to show up for it. What you witness today is that that same thing in a different room, in a different century, on a different set of questions. Two brilliant men have been through more than most of us will ever understand, professionally, personally, and all in the public eye. Choosing to sit across from each other and talk honestly, not because it was comfortable, but because it was necessary. The problem is complexity, and complexity requires humility, not just some hard verdict. That's not a reason to give up on truth. It's a reason to pursue it more carefully, more honestly, and more together than we have been. We are still living in the aftermath of one of the most divisive public health crises in modern history. The next one is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when it arrives, the difference between a nation that navigates it well and one that fractures under it will come down to one thing: whether we did the work in the meantime, whether we rebuilt trust in each other and in the institutions that we're going to depend on and need. That work doesn't end when you walk out of this room today. It starts. Thank you both very much for being here, and thank you all for being here. I appreciate you all very much.
Great. Thank you all. Please stay in your seats because we're not done yet. There is still the fireside chat coming up. We're going to close out, so please stick around for that. We're going to start that in about 15 minutes or so. This is a great opportunity to ask questions directly to leaders of Braver Angels, Mari, and others. They'll be on the stage, so an opportunity to reflect about the convention and talk about the future. A few important announcements for alliances and volunteers. If you want free stuff, you should stop in your tracks right now, because I'm gonna tell you something. We have materials, banners, and other things that you may want for your local alliances that come to the information desk and let us know if you want stuff, and we will do our best to provide. We have materials that we can't take back with us this year, so we want to give back to you all and take this to your communities. We also still have merchandise. Make sure to get the t-shirts and stickers and totes before they're gone. Get them while you got them. And checkout. Checkout, so the fireside chat will end at 12. We need to be out of housing by 3. When you leave, you can leave your linens on your beds, take all your personal belongings out, and then, as we've mentioned times before, your 2 room keys go back in the envelope and handed to the person at the front desk. For parking, I know many people have had issues. We've talked about Linen Gate. We know there's also Parking Gate happening simultaneously, the east and the west of problems. For parking, you should just be able to drive to the attendant and let them know that you're with us, and they'll let you out without going to the annihilation chamber, and you'll make it home safely. Thank you. We'll be continuing this soon. Okay, everyone, in just a couple minutes, we're going to start the fireside chat. We would love everyone to come as close as possible. Please come down to this center area. We're going to keep it more intimate conversation between the audience and the people on stage. Check, check, check. Cash a check. Okay, everyone, we are going to start the fireside chat. Braver Angels leaders report to duty on the stage.
I have to run right afterwards, but just appreciate this heroic effort in this very diffuse organization with, trying to get everybody even to come on time. We need one more. No, we just need one more. I don't care actually. I think. Actually, you know what? Let me take this one. Absolutely. You want these three? Like you want this one? There is no center.
Everyone's so quiet. Here we go. Hello, testing? All right. Y'all are so quiet. It's like we're getting ready to do something or something. How about a big deep breath? Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. Woo! Man, and we are so excited to have a chance to chat. There is no fire, it's already warm enough. But it's, fireside, meaning the comfort and the warmth in your heart of sitting next to a fire and having a little bit of a chat. So really appreciate everyone being here. Again, my name is Mari Giles, and we really appreciate just the essence of what's happened here over this weekend. I was just talking to Denise, and Denise was telling me something that I felt, and I felt this when I was a volunteer when I first went to Gettysburg. I remember I had been a volunteer, and I got this email, and it was so cool. It said, "You can apply to be a delegate in Gettysburg." And I was like, I can be a delegate in Gettysburg? It was Gettysburg, and delegate sounded kind of cool. Like, I got to go do that. And I really became a lot more deeply hooked in that. But what Denise said to me just minutes ago is that coming here is such a tangible and visceral experience of being able to see and feel and understand better the things that I'm trying to do. Speaking, I feel the same way, that you just can't get on Zoom. You can't get through phone calls. And she was just saying, thank you. And I feel the same way of that power, that energy of all being together. And to me, I say thank you to all of you and here on the stand for making that happen. Now, I know that you've heard way too much from Bill, but I'm sure that you've heard plenty from me. Oh, his mic is not supposed to be on yet. We talked about this, Mark.
What was your name again?
Okay, that's risky when I start jumping in Bill's territory on that.
He provoked me, right?
Yeah. It's always my fault. We're going to hear from you. There's one little bit of info that I want to be able to share, because you need to know for sure there's people here that you would recognize on the stand, and there's people that you don't. And Jessica Lominer, who's not here, she had a previous family commitment even before we hired her months ago. And thankfully, she didn't have to change the family trip, but she did need to leave early this morning to get to Alaska. But I wanted to help you understand how we've been working to organize, because when it comes to the national staff to be able to help support, and then we're going to have conversation where you're going to ask questions, and we're just going to have a fireside chat and hear from you. But it felt like it's important for you to understand who and how we're organizing, not because there's going to be some test, but because of one simple thing. Who do I go to? How do I know what you do within the organization as a staff member within Braver Angels? Well, we recently put ourselves together in the concept of a house. Does that have anything to do with what we have talked about of maybe holding America or building a house united? Right? We look at it as there's 4 sides of the house. So right next to me here is not Ed McMahon, even though I confused some of the delegates apparently when I referenced to you, Chick, as Ed McMahon. This is Chick, not Chip. I've heard Chip many times. It's Chick with a C, and it's you, right? Okay, it's Chick. You'll read it and it says Charles, but it's Chick. That's just a decoy, so if you don't know that Charles is Chick, you can get by. But now Chick, when he was on the couches with us in that earlier session, he was talking from the perspective of being an alliance chair and a volunteer for how many years?
4 years. 4 years was
For 4 years.
Yeah.
And intense, deep knowledge. And when we did an offsite retreat right after we did, I'm curious with this group, we did 7 of these online sessions using our Converge platform that we call Civic Exchange, like the week after I started. Did any of you get on those? Yes, this is awesome, good. We had about 510 people in the 7 sessions that we did, 90 minutes. If you haven't learned something about me, you're gonna find out you're gonna be invited to participate again in those. I like to learn from you, we like to learn from you, so we periodically will use that as a way to kind of talk to everybody in a respectful and quick way. Well, after we did that, we gathered in Minnesota, and we had an offsite with a number of people, and you wish you could bring this whole convention to it, but it was a smaller group, and one of the people that Barbara had talked to me about is that we got to invite this guy Chick, and I'm like, well, who's Chick? And Chick was part of the team that came as one of the volunteers as this offsite where we had 25 or 30 of us for 3 or 4 days to talk about all the stuff y'all told us. And just recently, I'm pleased to announce you, some of you read emails, but in case you hadn't read an email or heard about it, Chick was just recently hired to play the role of our Chief Program Officer. I won't take a ton of time to explain it, but talk to him. He's more qualified to be in this seat than me. So in terms of the things that he's done and his background and all, I mean, it's amazing. And already, even though he officially didn't start June 1st, we just didn't tell everybody that he was actually starting way before that in terms of work. Chick is responsible for the practice side of the house. The practice side. We call it the practice side of the house because if you have ideas and things that you think we should practice and you have that are low lift or high lift things, his group with programs and working forward, we're working out how this all comes together from just how to operationalize it. But he is, in terms of Chief Program Officer, being able to put together tools and methods and process. We call it freedom within a framework. No, we're not trying to get all these rules, but freedom within a framework so that we can optimize and be able to help better. So if you have a question of anything related to that, that's the practice side of the house. Now, sitting next to Chick is someone I've met before. I'm going to introduce her as Barbara right before we banish her as of tomorrow. Not totally, because we needed her to know, we had to surprise her. If you weren't here, we surprised her in this because we knew she wouldn't let us do it. But when I was hired and brought in, she's been the Chief Operating Officer for 2+ years of an 18-month commitment. Yep. Yeah. And I mentioned it last night, but she really has been, I mean, when we connected and I accepted the job and she just happened to be in Utah at the time, and with your daughter, or, yeah. And so we had dinner night. From that time moving forward, she just has set up everything to help me understand what's going on. I didn't know how much water was in the fire hose that I was about to partake thereof, but she helped focus it and put it into little cups so I could, process it that way. Now, Barbara is Chief Operating Officer. Jessica, you might have known her in the role of Director of Debates, where we hired her just a little while ago. Once again, I would argue that in a lot of her background, she could be sitting in my seat as well, if you see what she's done. But we have asked, and she accepted, for Jessica to become the new Chief Operating Officer, replacing for Barbara. Yeah. Okay? She's off in Alaska or on her way, and so we're going to be here. But that side of the house is the delivery side of the house. The delivery side of the house. So how do we support you in delivering the kinds of things that you do? But when we say delivery, this is one of the things we're trying to work on as we go forward, is that delivery is us supporting alliances to form, grow, and thrive, and then have the tools and the process to help you to be able to deliver. But y'all are the ones that deliver, and we are here to serve. And so we're working to make sure we do that. Chick talked about some of those. But these two sides of the house are together in the house because they got to work closely together. How do you practice and how do you deliver, right? Now, right next to there is a young man named David Lapp. Did you pick up the contrast there? It wasn't.
Mari,
Okay.
is this supposed to be a fireside chat?
Yes, we're almost there. What you don't know, and yeah, I'm
He
not going to
deserved
even.
it. Did he
He's
not deserve-
provoking me now. He's provoking me now. Yes, don't take the bait. I'm not going to say, tell me more. David is helping and running on the, with David and I together on the influence side of the house as Director of Strategic Initiatives. And he's been leading, as you saw, in I think one of the best plenaries we had of all the Citizens Commission on Immigration. But the influence side of the house is everything from you saw our advisory council, the 23 out of 50 that we're going to get. You saw our Civic Scholars Council. Holy cow, Harry and team and Martine and Barbara and Valerie. That's on the influence side of the house. And Braver Politics, Elizabeth. So that's, if you have a thought about, wait a minute, this is something we could do to drive more influence, that's what that side of the house is for, okay? And then the person who has been hiding in the wings that I don't know if you've met yet, we hired 4 months ago, Nicole Garzino. Nicole is our Chief Development and Marketing Officer. Started 4 months ago. Big round of applause for Nicole. And the last thing I will say about Nicole, because you already know Bill, is the last thing I will say is that Nicole's over the growth side of the house. That's why it's development and marketing. For those of you that haven't grown up in the nonprofit world, I had to learn this better. Development means raising money, okay? Which we have to do these kinds of things. So, with that setup, making it much easier for you to understand how to direct your questions, you now know the 4 sides of the house. But 4 sides of a house connect. We're not silos, we work together. And the reason I'm saying Bill last is the architect role of how we do all this. Let's hear from you. What do you want to ask us and what should we talk about? And I assume there's mics. And say who you are, Sugar Bear, and where you're from.
Oh, yeah, I'm Ron McFarland from Ames, Iowa, better known as, I'll say Mary Poppins, but Sugar Bear, okay? And I speak from the view of a person that was very athletic, and I'm kind of handicapped a little bit. Things that I've noticed that maybe for a future convention, hopefully I'm fitting every area there. Water outside of every breakout session, okay? I like the carts going back and forth, so I was able to get to everything. A little bit better communicative posts for those who are not technically sound using how you pronounce it? Wova, yeah, how can we strategically do that? And then also, I have a lot of hats. I wanted to meet with my regional states, and I wanted to meet with my alliances. You gave us a lot of breakout sessions. Sometimes it could be overwhelming to get to everything, because I am that type of person. I want to go to everything. But I also want to meet and keep my relationship with my braver angels that I speak to on a daily basis, strategically. How can we use this information? How can we get that development money, and et cetera, because that's how I think. And so anyway, if anyone can answer that question, and also, I'm really concerned about Bill Doherty's position as far as us following through on what he has built. In the field, I see it diverting, taking a 5-hour workshop and trying to trim it down. That is not the Bill Doherty way, if you guys understand me. He built this with research and everything like this, and we need to say to it. But if we have problems with it, then we need to come back to the development, whoever created it, and say, okay, how can I make this a little simpler? Thank you.
So heard there's some recommendations on the convention pulling together, but real quickly, let me translate that into a question for the two of you. The part of the strategic plan says we need to meet people where they are, and that means some of these longer things, and then we got to do shorter things. Can Bill, you, and Chick talk about why that's important that we have the discipline, but then we also open the door for things that can meet that
Sure.
don't take 5 hours?
What I heard you say, Sugar Bear, is let's be mindful and intentional about this. Let's figure this out together and test out things, not just sort of randomly decide, well, I'll just make it less time. And so we're in the process of that. So like the Skills for Disagreeing Better workshop is 90 minutes. So far, it's impactful. So we just need to do this very thoughtfully and consciously and not just sort of randomly. So that's my response, and I appreciate you saying we need to hold to our discipline, and then we need to evaluate everything we're doing, okay? And when something is not working well, we change it, but we do it together. That's consistent with what you said, yeah.
And I would add that we're working on developing processes where we take our programs and we vet them, so have Bill look at them and others look at them and validate that they are following our practices, research-based practices, and then creating ways that we can roll those out to the alliances and looking at, classifying them as this is a higher lift and this is a lower lift. And so we're trying to increase the diversity of the programs that we'll be offering the alliances.
I'll also say, as a member of the convention core planning team, Sugar Bear, I resonate with what you said about how you would have liked to have more time, being able to meet with fellow alliance leaders and people in your region and so forth. And I take that to heart, and it's something that I'll be thinking about as we plan our next convention,
Like
with
state
alliances
blocks,
being
alliance
the heart
meetings.
of what we're about. So,
Yeah,
well
because it's so interesting that we're thinking we want to get all this stuff so you can pick and choose what you want to do, but we're giving all this stuff and you feel you got to beat all of it.
We've got Kit here.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Kit Bailing, State Coordinator, Wisconsin. First of all, shout out to all of you. You're doing great work. Great, great work.
you're doing great work,
Especially
Kit.
Mark. I have a question about the leaky bucket. So one observation I've had as the Blue State Coordinator, sometimes we have people who get all enthusiastic about Braver Angels and jump right in and want to get involved, and they don't really understand what the work is and what we're doing here. And I will just, as a Blue, I'm going to say I've experienced this mostly with my Blue brothers and sisters who come to the organization and they think somehow this is a place where they can convince Reds how wrong they are. And that, has anybody, is that?
Truth.
Yeah. And so I think that comes from us not doing a good enough job of saying very clearly that we are here not to change one another's views, but to change our views of one another. Like, that is foundational.
Love that.
And
Love that.
I don't know how we do a better job of that, but I think that statement has to be just about everywhere, because then people really understand, and I think we have to be clear, not everybody is made for this work. And it is work. It is work. So comments?
Yeah, Barbara, let me ask you first to talk about the journey piece.
I want to agree that it is work, and I want to say thank you to you and all the other volunteers for all the work that we're doing together around the country. It's seriously. For me, being part of this community of people who are choosing to roll up their sleeves and be a part of the solution is so heartening, and it has been such an honor. To your point, one of the things that we've been doing in our recent work as we've been building out the sides of the house is looking at the member journey and the volunteer journey, and really thinking through what brings people to Braver Angels. People come for different reasons. Some people come to Braver Angels because they've lost a relationship that means something to them. Some people come because they're worried about the country. People come for different reasons. And we are working to make the path through clearer, meeting them where they are, and showing how they can plug in. But an essential part of that, to your point, is making sure they understand what we're about. And I love your phrase, and I think we should steal it.
Is Wendy here? Wendy. Okay, so do some jumping jacks real quick so they can see you. There's Wendy. Okay, go talk to Wendy, because Barbara set that up perfectly, but I'm telling you, the precision and the accuracy of this journey map that's been developed, it's not just like, I wonder what this. They worked on it for 8-9 weeks with a broad team, and what you're going to see is that we'll start mapping toward that. The only other part, so ask Wendy about that, but the only other part I want to emphasize is that 90+% of the people that come our way are not going to be a co-chair, they're not going to be a moderator, and they might not even be an organizer. So I want to open your eyes, your mind, our minds collectively. We still need them. But if you look at the data of the people that come our way, 90% plus are not going to do a lot of the things that we consider the heavy work. We need the people that do the heavy work, but we also need to have the light lift work so everyone sees themselves in this work and they feel like they belong. So we got to solve for both. Oh, I forgot that again, Bill. Wendy, what's your job? Woo! Yes. Director of Volunteer Engagement. So Wendy and Scott Palmer, and if you haven't met Scott, amazing in terms of the training. That's what he does. And by the way, did the video of Barbara's tribute. So, next question. The people. I'm going to use Bill's thing. It's the people with the microphones that are choosing. That was a good one, Bill. I'll give you credit.
That one
when
here.
you
Right here.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you. My name is Sam Bushman from Utah, and I have 3 quick points.
Utah.
Yes, sir. Number one, I just want to say that it's hard to get your arms around all the different Braver Angels terms and meanings. Like, I know what words mean, right? But when we say delegate, leader, co-chair, facilitator, one-on-one, and all these different terms, so I would like to see at one of these conferences maybe a Braver Angels 101. Like, I've got 100 down. I know what we do. We want to work together. I get it. I support it 1,000%. But a 101 for people like me, there's a lot of us new people, right? And so maybe that would be helpful. At least for me, it would.
Mark, we're still recording and streaming this one, yeah? Are we recording?
Yeah, we're recording.
Okay, good. All right, good.
That's a great idea.
That's a scary thought. No, I'm just kidding. It's all right. I'm just joking. Secondly, I would like to say that
I wanted to say, though, guess who's going to be running Brave Rangers 101 next week? What's your name again?
I will be here to serve.
Don't be wise, don't be witty, you'll end up the chair of the committee.
All right, I'm sitting down. No, the second thing I'd like to say is that I heard, and I don't know if this is true, and I don't mean to speak for anybody, I just want to make sure I understand this. Somebody said there was like 10,000 organizations that are trying to do this kind of stuff?
12,046, according to the National Civic League.
Okay, I don't even know how to respond to that. Okay, that number's just beyond understanding. But the reason I bring that up is because I would like us to spend time making sure people understand what is unique about Braver Angels then amongst the 12,000. Is it that we bring red and blue together? Is it that we accept people for who they are? Is it because we learn to listen? And maybe a few bullet points that would help us separate ourselves from the pack would be, at least for me, very helpful. Because it helps people explain it. Even if you're not very knowledgeable, you could say, yeah, but these, Braver Angels is this, this, and this. And that's how they're unique and different and why they bring something special to the table. I've seen it at the event, and I'll tell you one of them, and my last point, and then I'll sit down. I know I talk too much. When you go to a lot of organizations, there's like the rock stars, and then there's like the rest of us, right? Braver Angels is not like that. The second I walked in, these leaders are driving me around. It almost makes you want to cry. These leaders are driving me around in golf carts. And I'm like, who are you? Oh, I'm the CEO. or I'm the so-and-so, and you're just like, these people are for real. And to me, that's one of the key points that sets apart Braver Angels. Thank you.
Nicole, I want to come to Nicole and Bill, because Bill, you've been here for a little bit, and maybe David want to weigh in, but address this. But Nicole, on the growth side of the house, yeah, you're new. What's the perspective here? What is the unique secret sauce?
As you said, I'm brand new, and one of the first things, I think I actually asked this in one of my early interviews, because I knew Braver Angels wasn't at a place to have that in a elevator speech in 3 sentences. But because I wanted to join an organization that was exploring and changing and growing, so I knew it wasn't 100% set. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure I was joining an organization that did have that, like you said, a clarity, a niche, a part of this whole ecosystem. And so for me, again, I am answering as a fellow newbie to this, but from what I've seen, and you just pointed it out, first I should say, of those 12,000, many of them are very small community-based organizations. But even within that, there's several hundred that may be our size and above doing this work. I will say, before I talk about what I think is our niche, part of the strategy and part of the way we all succeed in shifting thinking in this country is partnerships, right? So we are not thinking ourselves of Braver Angels as one of, let's say, the top 500 competing for narrative out there in the world, but rather who can we partner that's next to us? You use the term lanes. Who are aligned organizations that are doing this work? They're not all doing the same thing. They might have a different audience, like specifically college students, or they might do something like media creation, as All Sides does, etc. We are out there finding our partners that complement us and working together. I've been to several national events, including a Council on Foundations, which is all the funders and foundations. They want to see us work together too. And we were there a few weeks ago talking with even foundation partners about this. So, to answer your question, in that space of all those major organizations doing this work, one of the many things that makes us unique, besides our programs that you've helped create, is that we're volunteer-based. And that our structure is alliances. We are not a policy wonk organization where it's just us and some scholars, right? We're doing the work on the ground, and not only are we doing the work on the ground, we're taking we rely on all of your experiences, your feedback, what you're seeing in your communities. That's where we're gathering most of our knowledge in order to make change in our programs, to make change in our messaging. So I think that's one thing that really just makes us different. Not that other organizations don't use volunteers, but that here it's core. It is the alliances, the programs on the ground.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add that. So I just cracked that joke about don't be wise, don't be witty, or you end up the chair of the committee. That really is, I think it's the thing that I'm most proud about with Braver Angels, is the fact that if you see a need, if I see a need, if you see a need within Braver Angels, obviously we can't just go and have anarchy, but it really is within the spirit of, if that's within our mission and if there's a need, then there's a lot of empowerment to go and do the work. And so that, I think, we are a volunteer-driven organization, and that those of us on staff are here to kind of tend to and help along and to serve and to work with everyone to accomplish that. So I do think that that's a distinctive.
Yeah. And as you have these different ideas, that's why we're trying to put a process in to help to say, okay, try and experiment your things. And the framework we offer is we'll have a process to see what we can support nationally, but then also want to make sure from a messaging standpoint, this was the first effort where we had a concerted effort throughout the entire weekend to help bring to life so you could see yourself in the concept of courageous citizenship. Did you see it? Did you hear it? Yes. And then partnerships. We tried to do a lot differently with partnerships this time. Did we get that?
So I'd like to add, so I love this. In fact, I'll write you a check because she's so good at selling it. I'd like to add that the decision made early on that at every level of leadership we'd be red and blue and other in balance is huge. It's huge. Most of the bridging organizations are blue. That's just, it's not a conspiracy, it's just, you know, who shows up and who signs up. And that's what would have happened to us. What I tell people, in addition to the volunteer thing, by the way, I've been a volunteer all these years. Okay, so just. So after the applause, I just forgot what I was going to say. Not that I'm tired. I don't want you to think I'm tired here. So this convention, part of the magic of this convention is the decision that we're going to be balanced politically, red, blue, and other. If we just said, well, who wants to come, then we end up unbalanced. So that's another big part of this. So it's the decision at that level of leadership in the convention to balance ourselves is. So what I was saying was that what happens is the design of things, of workshops and other things, unless you have reds and blues and others in the designing and vetting, every friggin' word in our workshops is vetted. What you get is a bluification. Okay? It's just natural. And then the organization drifts that way. So in addition to the volunteer thing, I just wanted to add that as part of the secret sauce with us.
I would totally agree. It's the main, I think it is the main one. Where are we at? Right here? Mark?
I'm Richard Davies. I make a podcast called How Do We Fix It, which reports on the people, projects, and ideas of Braver Angels. And I have two questions, again, for Nicole. These are growth questions.
A little closer to your...
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have two questions, again, from Nicole, and to build on the gentleman from Utah who talked about rock stars versus the rest of us. So this is a growth question. How does Braver Angels do a better job of reaching people who feel vulnerable? We are pretty good at being confident, at least those of us who stand up with a mic. We're pretty good at sounding confident in our own ideas and beliefs, and we project that. But how do we do a better job of reaching people who are uncomfortable and who are struggling and who want to feel more welcome? And the second question related to that is, and this is Scott Schluter, I don't know if Scott's here, his idea is to answer this question, what's in it for me? When I join, what's in it for me?
The question of how do we make people feel comfortable, and I think this is connected to the journey, because there's two pieces of this. In my side of the house, it's a lot of reaching the general public who haven't yet been engaged with Braver Angels and bringing them in, and how do we do that? And your question is relevant, and I'll get to that in a minute. And then once they've come, and once they're here, how do we continue that so there isn't the leaky bucket? So it is this question for me, and I'll answer it, but it's also just to share out, we're talking about that when it crosses teams a lot. because it is a journey. It's a journey from the first time someone hears about it, whether it's on a podcast or on social media or from a friend. Now, it's a very, very complex question, and there's different reasons. There's sub-audiences in there, right? There's different reasons someone might feel uncomfortable, and we are consciously, strategically breaking that down right now. Just to use our red-blue, we're looking at, to maintain our balance, we will admit, like you said, yours is a lot of blues, we need to get more reds in. And so we're working through this complex question of what do we do both with external messaging to the general public, as well as the partnerships we choose, as well as the events we host, make those reds feel comfortable about coming. Yet at the same time, making the blues that may feel very vulnerable because of a particular, let's say, how they identify or they're afraid of something. So it's very, there is a tension there, you're right. And so one thing that we hope to do in the next few months is to take very specific questions. Let's just take the red question first and workshop that amongst our staff, but then amongst some folks that I've already talked to this week that are red and have an understanding of that tension, and almost like feedback groups. You know, what would make you more comfortable bringing a friend, etc. But I would love for you to maybe take some of this, just from a social psychology point of view, if you're comfortable on that, how you've done it over the years since I haven't been here.
What was the question again?
How do we make people feel comfortable when they may feel vulnerable?
Reach people who are vulnerable to feel like they have a place here?
Yes.
Well, that's a tough one. That's a hard one. I think you've raised an important question we need to be thinking more about. When people, how to get people in the door, right? I don't have a quick answer for that, particularly if they're. We live in an era where people don't show up at things anymore. Yeah. You know, this is the big decline in membership organizations. People, they watch TV and they're on social media, and people don't show up, and we're part of that as well. So it's really quite tricky. I also want to respond to your second.
Yes.
I probably
Let me
didn't
say
answer.
one more thing.
Oh.
You made me think. One of the best ways to connect and deepen someone's engagement is peer-to-peer outreach, right? They come to an event, even if it's virtual. Is there a way that someone who's already a volunteer can connect with that newer person and with the right tools that we provide and their own empathy, really welcome them in, see if they have questions, keep in touch, you know, connect with them, answer their concerns. And so I think peer-to-peer is a big part of that. So we're going to just support all of you in ways to do that more.
Quick invitation. For those of you who are thinking, Braver Angels, we need more working people in Braver Angels. 90% of us have four-year college educations. If you are interested in building working class participation and leadership in Braver Angels, talk to Wilk, Amber Lapp in the audience, my wife, or myself. We'd love to think together about how we can work together on that.
And then, yes. And then your second question, echoing Scott Schuler, who's from my state, about what's in it for people. I'm increasingly, this is different from when we started, that people are suffering in their personal relationships in a far greater degree than 9 years ago, 10 years ago. It's striking. And I think this is something that I hope we can do more of, is say we can help with how to manage these relationships. My goodness, the cutoffs that are occurring. I mean, you referred to this. It's really quite striking. So we have, I'm going to do a little request here. In Minnesota, we have a conservative rural talk show guy whose stations, or his show goes all over greater Minnesota, we call it, who has invited us to have a half-an-hour Braver Angels show every other week. And we want to feature coaching that I would do with people who are struggling in a relationship, and particularly Reds, because that's the audience. And so, this, I think, is an untapped, felt need that people have, is that people who joined us first were more concerned about polarization in the country, which is great, but it's so personal now. And so I hope we can, recruit folks, some of them here, who are struggling in a relationship, to model, and it would be anonymous, it would be in Minnesota, but to be able to have people tune in and know about us because there's somebody they identify with who's getting direct help for managing a relationship.
And to put a real point on that, it's, to me, with what you're saying, Bill, is we've been talking a lot about this, is that we invite people to come participate in organized events. We're trying to get to where we provide benefits in your life that you value, that you want to come here. Now, our events are certainly, that's what gets all y'all and us here. You're like, yeah, I'm doing events. But I would venture to guess that you would like to have things in your life that are benefits, a value of being part of this organization. The dojo is something that starts to get in that space, right? It's a thing you can get access to. Healing, helping, connecting. And then also, we're working specifically to find credible messengers within trusted communities. You saw that happen here. If you came to the concert, or if you saw some of the singers, you saw Carrie and you saw Derek Thomas and Lizzie, specifically, strategically recruited to be able to identify with specific people because of what they bring in. We're going to be doing more of that because when you see people that look and feel like you, then you feel like there's a trust there. We don't have enough of that, but that's where we're trying to go.
Can I just say one last thing?
Yeah, no, go
to the second question, what do we get out of it? Or individuals. Related to what you said, some people, even if you don't, there are a rare few of us who might be surrounded in a bubble. Maybe their families, they don't have the conflict within their families. And yet they still are looking out there, they're watching media, they're feel this tension, and they're losing hope. They're losing hope in this country about what we can be. And I think getting involved in this work gives you back hope, it gives you a sense of agency, and agency leads to better mental health outcomes. I feel like I can do something about it. Yeah. So I think that's a great benefit to participants.
Could we, if you're comfortable, yes, if you're comfortable, don't if you're not comfortable, but if you have a personal relationship in your life that's been cut off because of this and you feel comfortable, raise your hand.
And then keep your hands up and add if you have a strained, if not even a cutoff, strained relationship. Yeah, even more.
Yeah. Great. Where's the next question? Where's our mic?
Over here. I'm trying to do a mix of red and blue audience questions also.
Hi. We really kind of focused on immigration. And
tell us who you are.
Okay. I'm Bill Chapman. I'm from Brooklyn, and I'm a red. And we talked a lot about immigration. I went to a lot of sessions on immigration. And I think that we failed to express 2 points of view. I think there are a lot of Reds who feel that it's really important to enforce the border much more aggressively than we've been doing it. And I think there are also a lot of Blues who feel that it's really important that we not do that. And the reasons for either of those points of view were not really discussed. And so that, yeah.
At Braver Angels, we seek to bring to the table Americans from all across the ideological spectrum on this issue. And so, to me, that's a weakness and that's a limitation if you did not hear that in the sessions. In our work at the grassroots workshops, we do find that most of the things about securing the border, that is a common point of agreement. But I take your point because I do hear about input that at our immigration policy roundtable level that we do not have people necessarily involved on the most progressive left who are most passionate about, who are most concerned about that idea. And then I would say on the right, in terms of border security, at least at the immigration policy roundtable level, we do really have some of the top organizations, Numbers USA, Center for Immigration Studies, and others, that are really kind of the gold standard in conservative circles about that point. So I feel like that's represented at least in our immigration policy roundtable work. But I take your point, and if you, I would encourage you to consider perhaps hosting a debate or a common ground workshop in New York and bring together people who have those disparate points of view to see what common ground or what better understanding of differences could happen there.
Let's dive into that. I want us to start a new practice when you introduce yourself. We didn't vet all these words I'm about to say. When you introduce yourself, can you say, I'm an American who leans red? Or I'm an American that leans blue?
What if they're not an American? There are some here.
Yeah, then what you are in terms of where the country you come from. Who's next?
I just wanted to talk about the connection. And since you're going to be working on supporting alliances, I have seen alliances do things that really make people bring in. Like we just said, come and have a picnic with us. Come have beer and brew, and they're clever names that have, alliances are doing really fun things to make that first connection. And then I carry business cards, and I'll hear people talking on the airplane. Someone was talking to me, and I look and see if they want to talk. And then I say, well, have you heard about Braver Angels? And it's heartbreaking when you hear people say, no, I've never heard about it. But then when I tell them about it, they want my card. So it's that face-to-face, one-on-one, and there's a lot of, and also get on email lists. I know there's so many emails of other alliances. New York does some great things. Berkeley brings lots of Reds in. They just have this magic way of doing it. But Southern California, because of Debbie Velasquez, has found, and Susan and Barbara and other people, we have found ways to make it fun. And I want to say I'm so glad the music has been elevated, because the music ties people together. And Ben, wherever you are, all those music people, that was one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. And there's lots of good stuff. Oh, sorry, I'm an American.
Oh, that's good. I don't know if everyone agreed with it, but you lean which way?
I'm homeless right now, but I lean blue on lots of issues.
We've got another blue here who's been very patiently waiting.
I didn't notice being patient, actually. I'm one of the old timers. This is my 5th convention. Woo! And I want to say that of all 5, I think this was the best convention. And at least for me, I spent most of my time singing with the songwriting.
And who are you again? I didn't catch it.
Oh, yeah, I'm an American. And I lean pretty heavily blue. And my name is Tom Smerling, and I'm from Maryland. Anything else? Well, my question is this. There's such a good feeling in this room, but we all know that outside there is the biggest crisis of my life, anyway, for the country. And it was captured better than I've heard it by John Wood last night when he said, half the country is afraid of severe authoritarianism, and the other half is afraid of extreme collectivism. In both cases, would take away our freedoms and worse. When we started, polarization seemed like the worst problem. I'm not sure that's true, because the polarization has led to much even greater and immediate fear. So how can we address those dual fears? How can we do more to address it internally or externally?
Yeah, I think it's a really good observation that you've made, and I appreciate that question. I think that Braver Angels, we're moving towards a way of being as responsive to these new cultural issues that emerge. So I would still frame it as a depolarization issue, since there's certainly a strong divide on both parts, but it's an issue that I think that we need to address head on, just like we addressed immigration. And so I would envision us working toward identifying those areas and developing programs around addressing those kinds of issues as they emerge.
I'm Walt Roberts. I'm an American. I'm a courageous citizen, and I lean all over the place. But mostly left, or blue. So I'm sort of new to Braver Angels in terms of being in the tribe, and this is my first convention, but I've been in the ecosystem of how we bridge our divides and how we make our country stronger and restore and renew our civics and our democracy for 20 years. So I watched Braver Angels get born. I designed Living Room Conversations, which was just acknowledged as a partner. And the thing I want to say is there's a wind blowing through an ecosystem of more like 15,000 different organizations, and they're not bridging. They're in like 7 different fields. And the wind that's blowing through all of it, the wave that's coming through, is this need to have a whole of society response to a whole of society problem with a whole systems design approach to it. What's happened at this conference is this whole systems design. Be a courageous citizen, get involved in the civics of it, start to see what's broken, and then have your agency and activism start to, for those who want to, fix what's broken about our systems, et cetera. So I just want
and Walt,
to
from this group, from your perspective, what you've experienced, what would you want to know from them and from this team?
What I want to encourage and know, and I see demonstrated, so I'll just +1 it, the thing about partnerships and about the two-wayness of it. The point, and then if you want to respond, is Braver Angels can bring more into what Braver Angels is about through all the vehicles that you have, and citizen-led solutions and having civic hubs. There's a two-way street to that. There are hubs that exist that don't have the Braver Angels magic in it yet. So Braver Angels entities in localities can plug into hubs that are civic hubs that are already robust or in whatever stage of development they are, and then would benefit from all the energy. And then to your point, it has to be cross-partisan. It has to be red, blue, and other, and even another other in whatever the decision and deliberation process is. So that's it. It's like building better Braver Angel hubs that have that sort of label to it, and then bring the Braver Angels magic into hubs that don't necessarily have that. That would be a key thing, and I just could celebrate about 1,000 other things, but congratulations to all of you, and I couldn't be more excited about what happened here.
Thank you, Walt, and thank you for being here. I do want to say just quickly on the partnerships, and if you haven't already looked at the strategic plan, it's available for any of y'all to look at. I know it's 15 pages, but take a look at it and you can give ideas. But partnerships matter. The way we're looking at it is, if our mission is to inspire and equip Americans to practice courageous citizenship across political difference through our skill building, convening, collaborative action, then we need partners to be able to inspire more people to get to that 15 million. But we also need partners to be able to help us on the equip, and it's a two-way component there where we can get partners that can help you, because as was mentioned with the 15,000, the number I had in my head was 12,000, but 90% or more, I think, are these local organizations in different spaces, but they're the ones that are going to help you with pipeline of leadership, of membership. You're going to be able to, and we're exploring ways that you can have charter partnership relationships with alliances at the local level, because this isn't, I love Braver Angels with all my heart, but I'm not in this for Braver Angels. I'm in this for culture change. We have, how are we doing time-wise?
Maybe one more question?
Okay, who's got a microphone?
Okay, I'm here. Good morning, everybody. I'm Loretta Donovan. I'm an American who leans red from the wonderful state of Connecticut. You've been brave enough to invest in me responsibility as being co-lead of Network, so, a job I didn't think I'd be taking a few months ago, and I'm really excited about it. I'm going to build on what Sugar Bear said as the first person who had something to say this morning. He wants us to honor our roots and not lose the good stuff that started Braver Angels. I believe in serendipity. This morning, as I was leaving 1300, came across a guy who was at the conference who is one of our network members, knew nothing about his organization, talked about what he does, what his hopes and dreams were. He has ideas about some things that don't work, and a lot of you have talked about that this morning. I want to suggest a way to address that, though. It's a little different than some of you may know. 40 years ago, a fellow at Case Western Reserve University named David Cooperrider, any of you know who he is? Invented something called appreciative inquiry. You build to fix what's broken by finding what works. You turn it 180 degrees on its head. We've got so much working here that's right. We need to ask, and I made a commitment as I was walking down the street this morning to say, I'm going to work on network. Where's Sam and Carly? Watch out, I'm calling you this week. We're going to do an appreciative inquiry so I can build network on what has been done that is good. And in doing so, I will help you to make it even better. Part two, every one of you mentioned something this morning where I said, I need to work with that person. I want to be integrated in my efforts in ways that I am making sure I am supporting you and you are supporting me.
Thank you. And hopefully by understanding, in fact, by understanding the sides of the house of how we're functioning and operating, I think you'll be able to know more in terms of connection. I also want to have, where's John Saunders? Where's John? John, stand up. And is Vinay in here? Vinay's not in here. John has been doing tireless, heroic work on Braver Network for so long and continues to do it, and partnerships matter. And so if you've got ideas on that Braver Network side of partnerships, talk to John. Thank you, John. Okay, maybe one more? Wrap. Oh, we got to wrap. Okay, we're going to wrap. But guess what? We still can talk afterward. We just won't do it with microphones. So let me just, as we wrap and close here, I just want to express gratitude one more time to each of you. I also want to emphasize one of the things that we said yesterday is it doesn't matter.
Bill, is that your timer?
What are you looking at me for?
Okay. I am tired. It doesn't matter unless we take action and do it, but I want to amend that slightly, that action can start with the desire of a seed within your heart that can grow. And if that's all you can do right now, great. If it starts growing more and you start to see fruit coming forward, then start planting more of that and doing more of that. And then lean into it with the people in your lives who you know. Move forward to find those who want to be a part of this, even if they don't know it. But they have the needs in their hearts, in their lives, and in their relationships. And let's expand this tent because we can realize an America where courageous citizenship is the honored norm. Thank you so much.